We're all in it together. We're all in the same boat. Those are the words of Tottenham man of the match, Lucas Moura, following Spurs' 2-0 win at Villa Park, courtesy of goals from Carlos Vinicius and Harry Kane. Today, I'm joined by Brian from Tottenham Away, HG from the Cheese Room podcast, and Fenn from Everything Football to dissect Tottenham's victory and look at the mentality of the fan base going into this international break. I'm Matt Hayes, and you're listening to the Tottenham Fan Voice podcast. Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes' Tottenham blog and to another episode of the Tottenham Fan Voice podcast. It's been a couple of weeks since we did one of these after a Spurs victory, but look, here we are. It's a 2-0 win at Villa Park, a place that we have become accustomed to leaving with all 3 points. I'm joined by a fantastic panel today to dissect just how Spurs managed to get that victory. We're going to look at as I said in the thumbnail, the Brazilians of the likes of Lucas Moura and Carlos Vinicius. Also taking a deeper dive into why Jose Mourinho went with the lineup he did and how it turned out to be a masterstroke from him, and looking at everything to do with that game yesterday. But before we do dive into it, let's meet our panel. First of all, we got Brian from the Tottenham Away podcast. Brian, absolutely fantastic to have you on today. How are you getting on?
I'm getting on fantastic, and as you said, it's always better to come onto these things after 3 points. After last Sunday and especially last Thursday, I thought anything else, I'm going to be in so much pain and I'm going to be so furious. But after a Tottenham win, the rainbows are out, the sun is shining, birds are singing, and it's great to be on the channel, Matt. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, again, thank you for your time. We got Fenn from Everything Football as well. Fenn, I know we spoke to you after the game yesterday. We're going to get a bit more analytical, I'd say, tonight. How are you getting on today?
Yeah, not too bad, Matt. And thanks for having me on today. And a great panel as well.
It is absolutely fantastic panel. And Fenn, to you, thanks very much for your time as well. And we've got HG from the Cheese Room podcast. How are you getting on this evening?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. It's nice to start a week with a win. So it's almost a shame that we have to wait 2 weeks now before we play again. But when Spurs win, as Brian says, everything's good.
Absolutely, 100%. And to you as well, HG, thank you so much for your time today. And look, it is a weird feeling coming into one of these after a victory. I think, look, we're going to touch on the form table a little bit later in this podcast, which as we were speaking about just before there, it's a weird thing that Tottenham are top of, and Shepherd here making that point as well. But look, Spurs, there's still talk of the dressing room being lost. There's still talk of the team kind of falling apart in terms of mentality. We heard Hugo Lloris questioning their togetherness after the game against Dinamo Zagreb. But I want to touch very quickly on these comments from Lucas Moura, who I think everybody could agree was man of the match yesterday. Just to look quickly at some of his stats, he had, of course, assisted the first goal. He created 4 chances, which was the most on the pitch. He had the most touches with 85, most dribbles with 8, most fouls won with 6. And it was just an incredibly impressive performance from him, which again, we will touch on in a second. But the comments that he made after the game yesterday, he said, "We're all together. We're in the same boat. We lose together and we win together. What happened in Croatia was our fault, everyone included. We believe in the coach because we know his history. We just want to be successful here." Brian, the question I'm going to put to you is, are those comments reflective of the players that were at Villa Park yesterday, or is it reflective of the entire squad, do you think?
For sure, the players that were at Villa yesterday, it was a very, very good performance. People that weren't even in the squad, obviously in Croatia. But I think it was a blanket statement for the whole squad. Obviously, we know there are some bad eggs there. He's not going to name them. He's not going to come out. And he needed to put a bit of silence, put out the flames that Hugo had poured petrol over. So I think they're all one club. Like Ledley King says, this is my club, my one and only club. It was kind of a bold statement like that. But I think we can paper through the cracks and realise who he's talking about.
Absolutely. I think we can look at Jose's lineup as well, and we heard what Alistair Gold said yesterday morning, how the lineup would ruffle some feathers, and I certainly do think it did that. But Fenn, Lucas has been utterly sensational since he's moved into that more central role. A player who throughout his entire career with PSG, with Brazil, even when he was back playing league football in Brazil, he played off the right, and that's where he was at his best. Now he struggled to do that at Spurs, but he's gone into the centre and he's been absolutely incredible. And I was kind of looking at how Spurs fans, we got that game against Crystal Palace. Was it Palace or a game before that where we had that front four of Bale, Son, Ali and Kane? It's one that we all wanted to see. Does Lucas Moura now have that number 10 role ahead of Dele Alli in the kind of the hearts of the Spurs fans, do you think?
I think he certainly does with these past couple of performances. I'm not going to name him in the Arsenal one. We know what happened there, and we know what happened against Zagreb. But I think, he's been stunning since he's come in. And what we needed was more contributions from someone through the centre, and that's what we're getting at the minute. His display yesterday was utterly brilliant and deserved of the man of the match. And he just needs to carry on his form, and get more on the score sheet with Son out at the minute.
Yeah, look, that is a big concern for Spurs as well with Son being out. But I feel you touched on it there. The consistency is what we need to see from Lucas Moura, because he has fantastic performances where he scores 3 in Amsterdam and then we don't see him for a month. And I feel that has been the kind of the biggest struggle with him. But HG, it's just been incredible that this run that he's had for the last month or so. What do you think has caused this Lucas Moura revival?
Just the fact that he's starting a little bit deeper. He likes to come and get the ball a bit deeper and then wants to take players on. We haven't seen that. If you look at the team that played yesterday against Villa, he's pretty much the only one in the team that was capable of beating someone. I don't see Kane doing it too often. I don't see Vinicius doing it. Lo Celso was pretty anonymous. So you were kind of asking Lucas to be that person, to commit a defender and to make some chances. So we were lucky that it worked out, because a better team would have realised that Lucas was the main threat and would have tried to stop it better. But Lucas is one of those players that, I don't know, like you know that he's got it in him. We've seen him do it obviously in Amsterdam, but can he do it regularly? Where is his best position? You talked about him being on the right-hand side at PSG. I don't think he's played there that much for Spurs, if I'm honest. He started on the left last night, played on the right when Bergwijn came on. I think he looked better down the right. I think he's played as a central striker when Pochettino was playing 2 up top. So Lucas, I still don't think we've seen the best of him, and that's surprising. I'm happy that we're seeing better of him, but where do we go from here? What is the future of the formation? What do we want to do? I think that's going to be really interesting to find out.
It absolutely is, and I think it's of course good that Jose has experimented with different things, but I think it's somewhat of a concern that 18 months into his tenure, he is still having to kind of fiddle around with that formation. Maybe we could talk about managers not knowing their best 11. Maybe he doesn't know the best way to shape this team. But look, you mentioned a front two there, and Brian, I'll throw this one to you. Harry Kane and Carlos Vinicius starting a Premier League game together. Now, it wasn't an orthodox front two. We saw Harry Kane popping up in every single quadrant of the pitch, as he so often does. But the lineup yesterday was probably the biggest talking point. And again, we touched on the Alistair Gold comments. But for you, what do you think it meant that Jose Mourinho put out Kane and Vinicius? Do you think it was purely a tactical thing? Or do you think it was a way to kind of say to the fans, if you think we're parking the bus, I'm going to play 2 strikers and prove you wrong?
So I have been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, I want to see Vinicius and Kane up front together. Because Vinicius, we had the stat over here in Canada, and I know you got it back home. When you heard he's had 9 starts and scored 9 goals, but from 12 shots on target, it doesn't matter who you're playing against. The goal is always in the same place. And to get 9 goals from 12 shots on target is a phenomenal conversion rate. And also the thing is with Kane and Vinicius, Kane is dropping back, and as we call it over here, the quarterback role. He's here, there, he's everywhere. He's dropping deep. And having that second striker there means that there is a poacher there to fill in the space that he's been leaving. A lot of the times we've been waiting for Son or Bow or whoever's playing to advance. So having him there is a huge statement. And just because 4-4-2, if we ever go that way, is such a taboo thing right now, there's no law to say you can't play 2 strikers. And you got to remember as well, Vinicius started off as a centre-back. And what I was really impressed with Vinicius yesterday was what he added in at set pieces for Villa. He was showing his strength, his power. He's added an extra man. And I honestly think I'd like to see a lot. I'd like to see them start permanently for the rest of the season in the Premier League together. I think it's a masterstroke. Yeah,
no, I agree with you on that one. I think Vinicius does offer something that if young strikers wouldn't. And it's interesting you bring up the point about him as a starting out as a centre back. Because I noticed it at one stage yesterday where Villa, I think it was the second ball off a set piece. It was looped back into the box, and Tyrone Mings was looking to get some space in the back post. And Vinicius, most strikers might go and attack the ball and try and get rid of it, but he just kind of shielded it out, kind of kept Mings away from the danger area. And if that had been a Harry Kane or a Lucas Moura, you'd expect them to go and attack the ball, and maybe then it's a more difficult situation to contend with. But Fenn, my biggest concern went into that game yesterday was with the injury of Heung-min Son, where would the creative spark kind of come from? Because we know Kane is the key orchestrator in that side, but the presence of Son and the movement of him off the ball is something that often makes things a little bit easier for Harry Kane, and we didn't have that yesterday. Do you think Vinicius could be a very effective link-up man there with Kane, or do you think maybe Villa just gave us a bit too much space in the middle of the park where Kane could pull the strings?
I think he can be very effective, but I think Villa was the best game for it, personally. I think against other teams, I'm not sure it's going to work too well, because we know Villa are strong at the back, and when we want to try and break through the defensive line, I'm not sure Vinicius is going to be the great man, the best man for it. But I love the connection last night, and I think between them two, they did show some great chemistry, and I think that's what we needed. And with him ruffling the feathers in there, you never know, he could come in and start. after the international break against Newcastle. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, he's that link-up play between the two of them, I think, is something that really does excite me. And it touched a second ago on how Lucas Moura could be someone who could kind of take Dele Alli's place in the team, but HG, Vinicius could be that man as well. You know, Dele Alli, who's been so effective in that kind of number 10 role, making late runs in behind the striker, and having that kind of link-up with Harry Kane, that is something that Vinicius is more than capable of doing. And he's a bit more maybe experienced, I suppose, playing in a more advanced role with the time he spent at Benfica last season. But how important do you think Carlos Vinicius could be if maybe Dele Alli doesn't actually regain his place in that Spurs team?
Well, I mean, if he's going to play, then you have to hope that he's going to be important. I still think that Dele and Kane, having played together for a number of years now, if they were the front two, there would be a better partnership. I think Kane and Vinicius, they have things that they can do well together, but they're still learning each other's games. They've barely played with each other. So it's interesting. If we are going to go two up top, then it's probably, I would say, we've got a number of options. Son can obviously be one of them with Kane. We could play Dele with Kane. We could play Vinicius with Kane. And it kind of depends on who we're playing against. I mean, we've got Newcastle next. You'd think with Newcastle, if Son's fit again, which he may well be, then it will be Son and Kane up top if we go for 4-4-2. I think that would be the best option. I think that with the options we have down the wing, we could play Bergwijn on one side and Lucas on the other. I think we've done that at the end of last season when we played Man United, and we played a 4-4-2 and enabled that to happen. So we have so many options. I mean, that is the crazy thing about this season. You talked about Mourinho not really knowing his best 11. If whatever formation he wants to pick, he's got a number of choices. And because of the opponents that we have to kind of base things on that. We know Newcastle right now are pretty limited. I think that's safe to say. So it's, what do we want to do to make life as difficult for them as possible? And that may well be Vinicius in this game. But looking forward, it's just nice to know that we do still have options. The injuries haven't really touched us this season, apart from maybe Lo Celso. And so we've got options, and we can do something with it. And if it's Vinicius, then great. But all I want to see more than anything is that it works. I don't really care who is in the 11, as long as the 11 produce something that I think is based on more than just individual talent, that players can actually work together and look to be something more than the sum of their parts.
Absolutely. And I think that's, like I always say, obviously it's not good watching Spurs win or watching Spurs lose, but when you do go out and lose, when you have been in the wretched runs of form that you've had this season, there's a way to lose. You know, and it's not like we did in Zagreb, but I think that is something that Jose and Lloris have touched on in their respective interviews this week, in terms of the attitude of the players, the kind of fight, the desire, the passion that you want to see from those players wearing that jersey. And Brian, I think that brings us nicely onto the lineup that Jose Mourinho chose yesterday. And one of the key things was that defence. It was Tanganga and right back, a centre back pairing of Davinson Sanchez and Joe Rodon, and then Sergio Reguilon playing out on that left. We as fans have been calling for a while to see the Tanganga and Rodon get their start in that team, and they got it together. What kind of a statement do you think Jose was making to the likes of Matt Doherty, Eric Dyer, and I'm going to leave Oliver and Aurier out of it for now because apparently they're ill. But what kind of statement do you think Jose was making with that defensive selection?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to use the quotation marks for ill. That's that's a very, very easy thing to say. Like you said, everyone has been calling for Rodon and Tanganga. Now, the thing with Tanganga, I think this kid is a superstar. I think this kid really is the real deal. I still don't see how Jose sees him as a right back. I think he's a centre back. But if Jose sees him as a right back, who am I to argue? So having him there, and I'm very surprised we didn't actually start with him against Arsenal, because I thought if you're going to have some power and pace, Tanganga can match you for it. He was astronomical. And seeing that lineup, when I saw it, I was so happy to see it. I thought Toby would be playing instead of Sanchez, but we'll come on to that later and how I thought Sanchez did. But I've been very impressed with Rodon as well. Yes, he made a mistake against Liverpool. Yes, he made a mistake against Chelsea on his debut, but he's a kid. You don't get to learn these things unless you make these mistakes. And the great thing I've seen about Rodon is he's quick, he's very, very vocal, and he's like Dawson. He puts his body on the line. He just loves defending. And I thought they were both they were literally sensational yesterday. And again, let's just hope we get to see more of it. The big question is, why did it take this long to see it? Yeah,
I think that's a big thing. And I think a lot of it for me does come back to Jose not wanting to make the big important decisions, because with him a lot of the time he's damned if he does and damned if he doesn't. He could have picked a really strong lineup yesterday. If we lost, it was his fault for not playing Tanganga and Rodon. But if he played that lineup and we lost, it was his fault for playing players who haven't played too often this season. It's always going to be like that for Jose. And one of the quotes that he had after the game, he said, "We need kids on the bench that live a dream, kids that if you play them for 10 seconds, they play them like the last seconds of their career. I need people on the pitch that I know the match is really important for them. Tanganga and Rodon are these players." Again, a lot of what he said in the last week or so has been, it seems, some sort of dig at the likes of, we don't know the players, but you'd imagine it's the likes of Dele Alli, Moussa Sissoko, maybe even Eric Dyer and Sergio Aurier, who we haven't really seen much since the penalty against Leicester and him storming out of the stadium against Liverpool as well. But Fenn, you often look at things like this and you want your manager to, there's two routes they can go with, and one, picking the best 11 to go on the pitch, and two is picking the players that, I'm not going to say personally he prefers, but the ones that it's more than their ability. It comes down to their attitude, the effect they have on their team and stuff like that. Do you think Jose is now taking a little shift from pick the best players to pick the ones that will, even though they may be lacking in the quality, will play better in that pitch or will put more into their game?
Well, I think that was a turning point last night, and I think he needed to do that, because if he would have come out with the same starting lineup, I don't think we would have won that game. And when he came out with that lineup, although it was very controversial, very much respect Rodon and Tanganga for coming in there. Both brilliant and played really well together. And this shows that Mourinho isn't scared, and he isn't scared to bring these youngsters in to try and perform. And we haven't really seen that before from Mourinho. We saw what he got with Rodon. He barely got 5 games. Tanganga, very limited as well. And I think Tanganga is a better option than Matt Doherty. You look at it, he's putting his body on the line for every single shot. He reminds me of Davinson Sanchez. He's there for the team. And the same with Joe Rodon. As Brian just said, very vocal centre-back and seems very confident at the back. And I think that's what Spurs need. So with Jose Mourinho talking about youngsters, I think that's great. And the fact that on the bench yesterday we had so many youngsters shows that he has a lot more respect for them than the people that are trying to disrespect him that weren't in the starting lineup. We could talk about Toby or Aurier. So, yeah, I think he's turned a corner with that, personally. Yeah,
and look, that whole talk of him, calling out these players and stuff like that is something that we will be talking about for quite a while. And Jose, I think, interestingly said he didn't actually listen to Hugo Lloris's interview after the game against Dinamo Zagreb, which I personally wouldn't believe, to be honest. I think when something like that, something so damning, something so strong is said by one of your players, I think the gaffer really, really does have to listen to that. And again, one of the quotes after the Villa game, he said they were a team, they fought together, they put in the game that honest, that dignity that football players should put in every match. HG, do you think he is alienating players from this team, or do you think he's purely rewarding the players who are giving everything for the badge?
I think Mourinho's first objective is always to protect Mourinho, if I'm honest. Look, he came out and said some lovely things about the youngsters that started the game against Aston Villa, about how they want to play for the shirt and they dream. Well, those guys have been fit all season, Jose. So why now? This is what I don't get. It's very, very convenient for him to come out and say, "Hey, look, we've won the game 2-0. These players, they were really eager to play, and they're Tottenham through and through, and they want to show what they can do." They've been there all season. So, like, it's very much Jose-centric. It wouldn't surprise me that if Hugo's come out and thought, "Well, this is the option that I need to do." Jose wants me to do it as captain, to come out and say these things, because Jose's blamed every other player now. So what can he do? He can kind of decide that there's going to be some sort of scapegoat that none of us really know who it is. So we stop focusing on the fact that we'd lost against Arsenal, we'd lost against Zagreb in terrible ways. Suddenly all the fans were discussing who could the snake be. So like I understand that that's his job. Don't get me wrong, that is part of Mourinho's job. He has to keep everyone off the team, in effect. Like, focus on individuals, focus on Dele, focus on Dombele last season. It's never Jose that we want to be talking about. But sadly, you look at the success that this team had. I mean, they weren't great, but they were good enough to beat Aston Villa, I think, quite comfortably. But yeah, are they really the future, or is it just Jose trying to protect himself somehow? It's really quite strange. I know that managers have done it in the past, but Mourinho has a huge amount of form for this. It's all about protecting Mourinho before anything else. And if the team wins, then great, he'll give the team credit. But if the team loses, he's not going to take any blame himself. It's always to do with players making individual mistakes. Whereas we can sit here as fans and think, well, I'm not being funny, Jose, but Dyer and Sanchez don't work well together. Winks and Sissoko don't work well together. And yet he started all 4 of them in Zagreb. So it's weird with Jose. Like I want to believe what comes out of his mouth, but frankly, I don't.
Yeah, and I think like I said, every discussion with Spurs at the moment is going to come back to Jose. And it's interesting you make the point about him trying to protect himself, because I saw a comment on Twitter the other week that said, Jose should walk away from Spurs because he's not going to be successful in his team. He's not going to get the money that he wants. And I saw a reply to it saying, if he did that, it would be purely to protect his reputation and not, not be sacked by Spurs, I suppose, without winning a trophy. And I was kind of thinking, if he walked away now, that would be the biggest damage he could do to his reputation. He's going to have to try and save face here at Spurs. And there are 2 ways he can do that. One is like he always does, pass the blame on to everybody else. Or 2 is to go out and win trophies and actually be successful at this football club. And if you're looking at it now, which one of those is going to be more likely? Perhaps it will be going down the route of calling out the players, saying it's the players' fault, the board's fault, and all that. And he did make a bit of a point about the board as well when he said there's kind of agents and outside influences affecting the dressing room at the moment. And one of the quotes he said was, to develop the spirit that we need, I cannot do it alone. I have to do it with my club. So again, he's kind of publicly calling on Daniel Levy there to come out and back him in the transfer window. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say I want Jose to leave, because I still, a part to me, whether it's hope more than any bit of logic, thinks he can be successful at Spurs. But we can't deny that the red warning signs are blaring right now, and he is in some way trying to protect himself more than the squad that he's with. And it's a very different situation to Pochettino. We're always going to have that element of it's going from one extreme to the other, so a lot of that will be questioned. But I think from our point of view, we're entitled to whatever opinion we want to have. But from inside that camp, these footballers are in football to be successful, and they have one of the most successful managers coming in to try and help them do that. Who are they to question him? Is the way I look at that. But look, Brian, one player who has been getting a lot of criticism, I know, is somebody you want to talk on, and that's Davinson Sanchez, who was quite decent yesterday.
Quite decent. I think outstanding. I honestly think he was outstanding. The reason is, don't get me wrong, I'm one of the first people to criticise him this season because he's a mistake waiting to happen. He really has been. But I've liked him a lot of times that he plays better when he's with Toby. And it's kind of like I said earlier, with the Dawson and King. Dawson was a great defender, but without King, he wasn't as good. And that partnership, because King could see him through the game. And yesterday, when I saw there was no Toby, and I recognised that Sanchez was the most established Premier League defender, the most established international, I was a little bit concerned, thinking, okay, is he going to be able to hold it together? He had a couple of shaky moments at the beginning, like any player can do. But the more the game grew on, he got stronger and stronger and better and better. And some of the tackles he made, and some were like sliding tackles, he timed them perfectly. And the thing is, we all have players that immediately get scapegoated for a bad mistake. Obviously, Sanchez didn't do himself any favours with the Manchester City one, and that's, as I've called it, the Del Boy through the bar incident. It only falls in horses when he did that face plant. But since that game, he has been outstanding. I really think he has come on, and I want to say that he's been outstanding because he's been so poor, and he's now performing that well. It's not been an easy road for him to get, especially with social media being on his back and everything. I think yesterday he was incredible.
Yeah, and look, like you said, there's always players that are going to be scapegoated, and I feel like Davinson Sanchez is the player who could have 15 incredible performances in a row, but as soon as he has one bad performance, everyone is saying, why is he being played, sell him, this, that, and the other thing. But credit where it's due, he's formed in the last maybe month and a half a really good partnership with Toby Alderweireld, and yesterday in Alderweireld's absence, for whatever reason that was, I think he did stand up to the call. And as you said, the most experienced Premier League defender back there. I think earlier on in the game, he was a bit exposed, but Tanganga being really advanced down that right-hand side. And I think we do have to, as much as we did praise Tanganga, we have to recognise that his positional awareness isn't going to always be at the highest level, because he doesn't play very often, and he's not, I don't think, a natural right-back. But as the game kind of progressed, Sanchez, in between two very inexperienced players, I think did take that defence by the scruff of the neck. And look, Rodon was commanding as well, but I think Sanchez does deserve credit for that yesterday. Fenn, one thing I want to ask you is about Harry Kane, who has picked up a knock in the last couple of weeks. He's looking tired. He wasn't at his best yesterday. Were you surprised that he played that 90 minutes and Jose didn't take him off at all?
I was more shocked that he started midweek on Thursday. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, I think he can play that 90 minutes, but it's not going to be his best 90 minutes. And although I don't think it was his best 90 minutes, he certainly put in a performance that was worthy of starting yesterday. So I think we can say that his injuries are affecting him, because I do believe his injuries are affecting him, and that's going to happen because he's getting older now. But at the end of the day, he's our best player, and even if he's at 50-60%, I think he is still going to be better than, let's say, Bergwijn trying to play 90% up front. I think that's pretty simple. So although his match fitness wasn't great, I think he still had a worthy performance last night. Yeah,
I fully agree with you there. And just keep coming back to the numbers. Joint top scorer in the Premier League with 17, top assister with 13. It has been an incredible season by Harry Kane, even by his really high standards. And for me, the biggest praise he's gotten is Alan Shearer talking, and he was a bit worried about his Premier League goal scoring record, but look, that'll all come down to whether or not Kane stays at Spurs, which is a conversation for another day. But HG, one player who split opinion yesterday in what was his first start since coming back from injury in December was Giovanni Lo Celso. What did you make of his performance yesterday?
Well, he's not a right winger, so why was he playing there? Would be the first thing. I love Lo Celso. I think there's something about him. I think that if you're looking for central midfielders that can do a bit of everything, he's the best one. He can pass, he can run with the ball, he likes to tackle, he's not scared of putting himself about despite not being the biggest guy. I love Lo Celso, but let's be honest, he's not a right winger. There were plenty of times during the game where he and Højbjerg or he and Tanganga didn't really know who was covering who. He doesn't have that real defensive instinct to track runners. And I think that's a big problem in our midfielders. We don't really have midfielders that like to track runners. I don't think Højbjerg enjoys it. He wants to have the play in front of him all the time. And so, look, Lo Celso, we all want to see Højbjerg, Lo Celso and Ndombele play with each other in a midfield three. But I don't need Lo Celso to be the Paul Scholes who's shunted out to one side in the hope that he can do something from there. He always wants to move inside. That's where he wants the ball. He's better on the ball than anything else. So it was only an hour. I'd like to think that he's going to get more chances. But again, we've got 10 games left and lots of players. He may not, but I don't think that we can really judge Lo Celso based on the hour he got last night, because it wasn't his position. It just isn't where he's best.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. I think kind of earlier in the season, me and David, who's of course regular on this channel, were kind of talking about maybe getting him out there just to get him into that team. But it's not the first time he's played there, and he hasn't looked too comfortable, I suppose, out there. And you mentioned that midfield trio. I think there was a point yesterday in that game where Lo Celso and Ndombele are kind of flicking the ball between each other down the left-hand side. And it was a really strange moment for me looking at them both being on a football pitch together, because as long as they've been at the club, it hasn't really happened too often, which is a really strange thing.
Do you know, it's funny, like I live in Austria, and I managed to wangle a ticket for the game in Linz when we played Lask, and I got to stand in the stadium and watch it, and the three of them started that game, and so I was super excited to see what they were going to do, and they were pretty ordinary that night too. Lask were just the better team of that evening. I think that the three of them need to figure out how they want to work together, because I think if you take all their attributes, it's a fantastic midfield, but one of them has to be a bit further forward. And if Lo Celso's not getting the ball, he's going to drop deep to try and get it, and then he's going to get in the way of Højbjerg and Ndombele. I think we saw that with Lamela and Eriksen trying to play together, is that they were kind of in the same areas, and I don't think it's any surprise that Lamela looks better now that Eriksen is gone. He gets to play more central, and there's fewer players around him. So it's a tough one. But you know, if you're going to play Lo Celso down the right hand side, it has to be almost in the way that Everton use James Rodriguez, as kind of like he's a quarterback down the side. You don't expect him to do much defensive work, although he will get involved. But he's an extra passer. He's an extra person further up the pitch that can keep the ball, and hopefully you can progress it that way.
That's a really interesting point that you make about the kind of Lamela and Eriksen getting in each other's way. But I fully agree with you on that one. And with that midfield, some things just look better on paper than they do on the pitch. And we're seeing quite a bit of that with Spurs this season. But Will Stewart here coming in with the $5 super chat. Will, thank you very much for that. You're an absolute legend. Says, with 2 weeks of semi-rest for most of the squad, do you see us coming out with even more energy for Newcastle? Brian, I'll throw this one to you, because you look at Son, who has, of course, pulled out of the South Korea squad. You've Sergio Reguilón picking up a little knock. I don't know if he's even been chosen for Spain, but if he has, you'd imagine they'll be a bit cautious with him there. Do you think this win going into the international break to boost that mood, and then going into a game against a team who are really struggling, could be a really good platform for Spurs to push on for the rest of the season?
It could be a fantastic platform, but always I don't know why, but always Newcastle away. We have such bad performances there. It's such a bogey team to go to. I mean, nothing will sum it up more than that 5-1 when we came third in a 2-horse race.
What a bad day.
That season, I mean, that was awful. I can remember just listening to Sky Sports News, listening to Soccer Saturday or Sunday, because it was last day of the season, tidying up the flat I lived in with my wife, and by the end of that game, the flat was messier than when I should have began, because I was just chucking everything all over the flat. Technically, yeah, I mean, it all depends. A lot depends on how Southgate uses Kane. I mean, I don't know why. We got San Marino, and I don't know the other two games we've got. He should not be playing the full 90 minutes, especially after playing 120 in Croatia against Zagreb. The full 90 minutes now. He always picks up. He's had his injury already this season. He has to be wrapped up in cotton wool. He is vital for the top four, whether he's playing dropping deep. He's just the linchpin to everything. So Son being back is huge. And as I said, I mean, the greatest thing I could take out of Thursday, the only positive that came out of Thursday is we don't play any more football on Thursdays. So having that extra bit of time, I think it is a great platform for us to have. And everything is, the stars are lining up, and that's what worries me. When you're being a Tottenham fan and the stars start to line up, you're like, okay, this is being too easy. This is looking too obvious. But put it this way, it's gonna be a welcome boost to have 2 weeks where hopefully not everyone's playing all internationals. They come back for the final push. We got a cup final to look forward to, and we're 3 points off top four. If someone said that to you at the beginning of the season, you would have bitten your hands off.
Oh, without a shadow of a doubt, and especially 2-3 months ago. And look, I think we'll touch on that a bit more later when we touch on the form table. But it's just the absolute bizarre season that we're having at Spurs and in the Premier League as a whole. But Fenn, just to follow on from one of the points Brian made there about not having Thursday night football, as much as we would like to have progressed in that Europa League, and look, I feel as though it was a competition that maybe with a bit of luck we could have won, but without those games on a Thursday evening now, the squad gets a little bit of a more rest. We only 3 points off that top four. Do you think maybe it's a blessing in disguise that we can properly focus on that Premier League and making a real push at getting into those Champions League spots?
I think it could be, but at the same time, I think for me, I would have loved to have gone in the Europa League, because I think winning the Europa League means that there's less pressure on Mourinho for this season as a whole, because as we say, I'm not too sure we're going to be able to win this cup final. I'm praying on it and I'm begging on that we do. Because if we don't get top four and we don't win the trophy, how much longer is Mourinho going to be here for? Now, I want the best for Mourinho and I want him to do well at Spurs. But if he can't do that, then I'm not sure really what he's going to be able to bring. So it could be a blessing in disguise, and it's only one game a week, as someone's literally just put in the live chat there. So, yeah, it could be a blessing in disguise, and it means that we can play our best team for every single Premier League game.
Absolutely, and that's the biggest bonus, because you talk about when Jose does like to put so much emphasis on success in the Europa League, in the Premier League, and at the time when we had the FA Cup as well, when you have so many of your best players playing all those games, it becomes tiring for them, and you're going to have natural injuries. And look, again, as we do like to say, we do have a lot of options at times where those options, when we wanted at the absolute peak, are kind of slim, because there's some players there who have incredibly underperformed this season. But HG, it's been a long time now as Spurs fans where we've always asked the question, would you take an FA Cup or would you take a finish in the top four? And the pendulum always swings either way. You know, it's okay, Champions League for progress, FA Cup to have a trophy. We're in a situation now where that FA Cup has become a Carabao Cup. And it's not just any game, it's a game against one of the best teams that have ever played in English football. The consistency from City, the incredible strength and power they have in that team. If someone said to you right now, it was your decision, Spurs either beat City in that Carabao Cup final or we go and finish in the top four and get in the Champions League next season, which would you pick and why?
I don't know if this is going to be popular or not. I would pick top four, frankly. I think that's the kind of club we want to be. A League Cup, it's a nice day out. We can have some bragging rights for, I don't know how long a League Cup is really worth for a club like Spurs. Of course, I'd like both, but if you ask me to pick one, I want top four. I want Champions League football. I want us to play against the best. That's the way we're going to improve. I understand that our squad might struggle in the Champions League right now, but look, Chelsea have got extra games to play this season. Leicester are still in the FA Cup. They'll have a few extra games. It's definitely possible. So I think if you asked me, I'll take top four.
John, I would be inclined to agree with you, and one of the main reasons for that, And it seems a bit of a trivial thing in the grand scheme of things. But when Harry Kane said he'll stay at Spurs as long as the club is progressing, and I think a player of his caliber 2 years out of the Champions League is a big thing that could perhaps sway him towards leaving Tottenham Hotspur. But look, again, a conversation for another day, and one that I'm sure a lot of Spurs fans will have coming up to the summer transfer window. But look, Brian, we've touched on it quite a bit now, and I want to dive into this one, the Premier League form table. For those who haven't seen it, the last 5 Premier League form tables, Spurs are top of it. And look, some of those wins were against Burnley, Palace and Fulham, and the other one against the Villa side that we do have a very good recent history against. Brian, the question I want to put to you is, yes, things have been bad in the last week or so for Spurs, but do you think everything seems a lot worse than it is because of the 2 games that those defeats came in? Do you think it was the 2 games we needed to win that we lost and we won everyone around it? Or do you think this is actually genuinely starting to show the problems that we have at our club?
It's 1 billion%. The 2 games, especially the Arsenal game and what they are to us, and then the manner of the response we got from that game in Zagreb, which was quite frankly, and I'm 41 years old now, I can't remember watching a worse game of football as a Spurs fan than what I had to witness Thursday. Top of the form table is great, especially at this time of the season, but it really does mean nothing. I think it's really been standing out because of the 2 fixtures. People are like, are you kidding me? Like you said, it's only against Burnley, Palace, Villa, but you can only beat the teams you play in front of you. Football's easy. You beat the team that are in front of you, you score more goals, you win. So the form table is great, and it's coming to the point, as you were just saying with the last question, I don't know why, I've just got the strangest feeling that Spurs-Leicester game, last game of the season, is going to be like all those years ago when Peter Crouch scored that goal against Manchester City. And I've got it set in my head that game is going to be Champions League win or bust. But yeah, the form table's great. Like I said, we've got our bogey team Newcastle next. Let's see what that form table says. If we get 7 points out of the next 9, 7 points out of the next 9, which is, I think, what we got. We've got Newcastle United and there's another team, I can't remember, Everton, I believe.
Everton, yeah.
So if we could take 7 points out of 9 there, especially with Manchester United and Everton being around there with us, then obviously that form table is going to look a lot better. The league table is going to look a lot better. And we'll all be smiling a hell of a lot more than we are right now.
Absolutely, fully agree with you there. And look, the Spurs fans are a fickle bunch. A little bit of a bad week could put us into meltdown as it did last week, but 3-4 wins in the bounce could have us straight back in the best mood that we've ever been in. And that is just the manner of the season, I suppose, on top of the fact that is how Spurs fans are.
Yep.
And I've been saying it probably since December, January, that there's a lot of teams in this race for top 4, and I don't think it's going to come down to quality or the manager at the club or the best players. It's going to simply come down to which team can put together a good run of form. And Spurs, to some degree, have had that with 4 wins in our last 5 Premier League games. But with a difficult enough fixture list coming up after the international break, maybe it's going to be a little bit more difficult than we thought. But Fenn, we're 3 points outside the top 4. There's people calling for a board to walk, for a manager to be sacked, for 99% of our players to be sold. And look, granted, a lot of them have let us down this season, but is the season actually as bad as we think it is?
I don't think it is as bad as we're making it out to be, but at the same time, I think the response that we got and the manner that we lost to in the last 2 games was, quite frankly, just disgraceful. And we looked at it yesterday on the watch along. We had a look at the teams around us, and we saw West Ham's running very, very tricky for West Ham. Leicester's run-in is very tricky as well. Although ours is tricky and Liverpool's is quite easy, I think we can sneak in there to this top 4. And with the top 4, that's a successful season for Mourinho, especially with the squad that he's got and with the players that's happened, and with the players that we've got and what's happened this season. Then I'm gonna take top 4 and run. So I don't think it's as bad as people are making out, but at the same time, we need to carry on this form. And as you said, a good run of form could get us into that top 4.
Yeah, I fully agree with you there on that one. And HG, I'm going to put a bit of a difficult question to you, if any of these haven't been difficult yet. But I've been saying for a while that this season now it's not about succeeding. It's not about being since it really kind of went bad, it's not about succeeding. It's not about trying to get the best out of it. It's about making it worth it. We want to kind of redeem the season to some extent, because no one's ever going to look back on this year as a particularly good season for Spurs. If we got a Carabao Cup and finish in the top 4, would you deem that in hindsight as a successful season?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about that. If we win the League Cup and we finish top 4, you could say that's the best season we've had in what years, because we won something. I'd like to think it's going to happen, but it's just weird. Like the thing with Spurs this season is that we've had plenty of seasons in the last 10 years where we've been there or thereabouts for top 4. Going into the last 10 games of the season, we've been thinking this is going to happen. We might do it. 10 years ago, it was Arsenal was always stopping us from making the top 4, but still, it was that's where we are now. That the issue with this season is that I think for most fans, we've looked at the squad that we have, we've looked at the players that we've got, and we think deep down that we haven't done as well as we should have. Whether it's playing defensive football or attacking football or whatever, I think a lot of Spurs fans think that Spurs should be higher than where they are. They should have got better results. They shouldn't have drawn those games that we did at the start of the season. We should have tried to, outscore opponents rather than hang on to 1-0 leads. There are so many things that deep down, every single Spurs fan thinks this was an obvious mistake, and we kept on getting punished for it because we kept on doing it. So I think that's the most frustrating thing about this season, is that we all know that really we could be where Man United are, we could be where Leicester are, we should be in those positions where other teams are trying to chase us. It's unfortunate that we're in a situation now where we are looking at other teams' results and not just focusing on our own. It's not in our hands right now.
Yeah, and that's the most worrying thing. We have, in a way, I suppose, become accustomed to, even though it was a short period of time where we were a Champions League side, we were a top 4 side. It's quite easy to get to become suited to that sort of thing. And I think it's good that we're in a position where the fans are demanding more and where the players are demanding more, because for so long there, we were a team who were happy to be in the Europa League. We were happy to get to a League Cup semi-final, an FA Cup quarter-final, have a bit of a run then, and just get back into European football. But now we demand more, we want more, and I think Spurs we're in a very important position now where we're on the brink of potentially taking off and becoming that sort of team. If we win a trophy or two, that hunger that comes in the players is going to grow, and it's going to grow. But if this whole Mourinho thing goes bust, I think we have a danger of becoming an Aston Villa, because before that game on Sunday, I did a podcast with a Villa fan, and he was saying he's in his 40s now, and for a lot of his life, he remembers Spurs and Villa kind of being on par. And when we made that Champions League in 2012, Villa were one of the teams pushing for that, but they reached that point where it could have been make or break for them, and they fell, and they ended up down in the Championship. And I think we're in such an important position now, such an important moment where we kind of have to decide where we're going. And a lot of that is down to Daniel Levy. A lot of that is down to the board and putting the money in the team, as Jose Mourinho has been calling for. We have a super chat here from Dark Sun G with the 5,000 South Korean won. Says, since the year ends in 1, I think that's why we will get the Carabao Cup. Next year ends in 2, so we will get 2 trophies. Please, good transfer window in summer. But look, if that's the way it works, if in 9 years' time we're winning 9 trophies, I think I'll absolutely enjoy that. But guys, before we do finish up, I want, in a word, yes or no, are we going to win the Carabao Cup? Brian?
Yes.
Fenn?
Yes.
HG?
Mourinho is a big game manager. This is to be the biggest game he has at Spurs. No, City will beat us quite comfortably, probably, sadly.
Yeah, look, I'll be honest, I agree with you on that one. I think that's City's game to lose. As much as I would like us to win it, of course, I don't think it is going to be very, very likely. But Jackson G, thank you very much for that super chat. Look, guys, I do want to say to the 3 of you for joining me, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've really, really enjoyed this podcast. There's been just one short of 2,000 people joining us throughout this as well, which is an incredible number. So thank you to everyone who has watched. Do make sure to drop a like in the stream and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already for more of these podcasts, Tottenham watch-alongs, which at the moment are taking off, previews, reviews, and any type of Spurs content. But before we do go, we're going to take a little run around the room. Can you guys hear me?
Now I can, yeah.
Now you can.
Yeah.
You went out for a second.
Oh, I do apologize for that. I was just saying, if you want to plug your socials there, Brian, if you want to get started.
Yeah, thanks for letting us do the plug. We're a brand new YouTube channel called Tottenham Away. We did start a podcast to begin with on Spotify and Apple Music, and our social medias on Twitter and Instagram are Tottenham_away, as you can see on my name, and for YouTube and Facebook, it's Tottenham Away. Basically, we have a Monday live podcast where we have a different guest every single week for a Spurs fan from around the world. Last week, we had the pleasure of having the actor Brandon V. Dixon, who's been on We Are Tottenham TV a few times, been on the hit show, Netflix show Power. And today we had the pleasure of having the voice of Spurs TV, a close friend of mine, Daniel Wynn. And we're just looking to get more and more Spurs people from around the world to come and join us. So please check us out.
Absolutely. Highly recommend to everybody to go over and check out everything that Brian has just mentioned. Fenn, let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, so it's my YouTube is just Everything Football. It's a bit different. It's reacting to all different sports around the world, but it's from a soccer fan point of view. So if you are from around the globe, and I know loads of you guys are, come and check out my channel. I'm going to be reacting there tonight. So video up in about half an hour. So go and check it out.
Everybody, make sure you're the first person in those comment section on Fenn's new video. HG as well, let us know where we can find you and the Cheese Room podcast on social media.
Yeah, so obviously the Cheese Room podcast, the clue's in the name. It's a podcast. We do 2 a week, usually after both games. That might be different now. We don't have a midweek game, but I think this week we did an interview with Sandro, the ex-Spurs player. So that will be out in the next few days, I would imagine. I didn't do the interview, but I know we've done one. And yeah, that's what we are. We've got a Facebook presence. We're on Twitter. We do everything that I think everyone else does. We are slightly different in the fact that we are Brits kind of based around the world. I live in Austria. There's a guy, Brendan, who's in Brazil. And we got the guys in London who go to the games when they can and everything else. So we do those things, and we like to think that we're good, and we want you to come and join us. So I think all Spurs podcasts are good in various ways. And it's good to see the people from Tottenham Away. It's good to see you, Matt, because I've heard a lot about you. And the Cheese Room podcast, we're a bunch of middle-aged grumpy men, but we love the Spurs, and that's kind of our thing.
Look, absolutely. Again, highly recommend go and check out the Cheese Room podcast. And I was actually talking to Brendan about that interview with Sandra a while ago, and it sounds like it was an absolute belter. So everyone, make sure to go over and follow them on Twitter so you find out when that interview is uploaded. Look, for everyone here again, I just do want to remind you this podcast is now part of the Sports Social Podcast Network, the UK's only dedicated sport podcast network. So make sure to go and check them out at www.sport-social.co.uk to find the next show you love, or to potentially join the team as well. So thank you very much for them, of course, for taking me on board. If you do want to listen to this podcast, the replay will be up on YouTube and also on all the top podcast platforms, including Spotify. So do make sure to go and check those out. Thank you now to the numbers risen to 2,300 people who have joined us over the last 47 or so minutes. Thank you to Will Stewart and Dark Sung-Ji, as always, for the super chats. Thank you to the panel for joining me. And as always, come on, New Spurs.